So what are your first thoughts about these
That was
couplets?
that was very interesting. I like that a lot. You know, it just came to mind. Springtime is like a jumping off point. It's a not just a time, of new beginnings, I guess you could say, like, new flowers growing and all this stuff, but like a jumping off point, like things that I've noticed, to myself is, always happens in the spring. Like,
Well, I
things
like
are
the old
just tend to,
definition of spring that
hmm what was,
it starts some odd days into February because the temperature starts to go up on this half of the world or whatever half of the world that you call spring, the other, in August for the others.
hmm
And the temperatures start to drop when fall, and the brightest time is
hmm
summer, the darkest time is the winter. I like that old definition. For some reason, they
hmm
changed it, and I don't know why that is. Partially
hmm
because I guess, some of the pruning and planting had to be done before the frost and all that stuff was over if you were in that area. So,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm going to take things
yeah.
out here. So we have 11 couplets, and
Mhm.
the last couplet. Oh, well, the second to last one. Remember that mitochondrial sort of stuff, and maybe that there was pretty much three groups of humans, and they all come from three males. And at another point, there was like seven females, and it doesn't refute the idea that maybe
Uh,
humanity
the,
started with one of each gender or whatever. But it's
mhm,
definitely something there that groups of the seven. So there's some significance with there, but
yeah,
to show
wow.
Buddhism, well, obviously a group of people that's growing is the Hindus. So by Hindus I mean the race,
hmm
because they outnumber
That's
the
it.
Africans. But the
It's
division,
interesting you said the groups and all that, because I had it had come to my mind just a minute ago that how like we think like the powers on earth, or however you want to phrase that, like one being ruler, one being follower, two groups basically, maybe a third one there. um,
well,
but
that's where chivalry came from, is that third group, the service nobility. All of the politicians, see, when people say chivalry is dead, it
mhm,
actually refers to the fact that the service nobility. I'll talk about it from a Sufi perspective at some point. I read a book, and I'm probably gonna. I don't know how long. I'm gonna give one of my little sermons while flipping through books at some point. But the there was, but that spreads it to everybody. Everybody has sort of a service role to
mhm,
existence, is what they're bringing up. But the idea is that the politicians and all that are supposed to serve the thing. And people, that's why people are so against the idea. It's like, don't bring us back to the idea that politicians have to serve their country and all this stuff first,
mhm,
because they're corporate donors and stuff like this. It's like
mhm,
America first and make America great again. It isn't just like whether it's like, okay, Trump's a jerk, whatever, but it's more than him,
mhm.
and or else it would mean nothing. Um,
Right, right.
but there is sort of, and the
Yeah.
group with the C, not the K spelling. um and yeah, there are movements, and if they spread. But one of the things about the seven, is that there's a rainbow effect. Like there's different types of people and stuff like this. I don't mean it in the see, seven is a
mhm,
rainbow, not six is a rainbow. Six is a rainbow has a very specific reason why they're deleting violet,
mhm,
and so the other one is like
Changing of the
basically talking about the Mahdi. It's not actually a prophet per se, but in the English way, we would say the prophet is like the end times, like sort of figure that's going to take a side with it. And there's stuff going on in Antarctica. It's like, how did they know about traditions have passed on like hundreds of thousands of years ago when more of the coast was available to travel on and stuff like this, and like, or millions of years ago, people passed that stuff on. But there's stuff about Antarctica, I think, that is going on that it's going to be made known at some point. And 47, I think of, well, in Nokian, you have the 18 keys, and the 19th is 30th. So there's the other, but 47 is also 47. If you look at it a particular way, you end up with the word for God or something like that.
47. Cool.
But so there is a significance that you can look at the numbers. So 7, 47, and that's all you have number wise in this one. You have some
changing of the powers. Like, where did that come from? Changing of the powers.
Yeah, a lot of it's just surface stuff. It's something else, right? And I don't know what all these odd terms mean. And the first prophecy, when you got the DVD, they told you, it's like, oh, I saw this and this, and so there was more information about the thing. So I'm the third seventh ray book, the Green Ray, could have been better if they included talk about the visions themselves rather than just the words that they were writing down with it. I think it would aid to some understanding, and it's like, I know it's open to interpretation and meditation of how you're going to use it. What was in the intro, we don't need to repeat everything again. But real wealth is scattered. Real and temporary wealth is sort of scattered about. But something is going to happen. It's not that there's too many people, but there's agendas to reduce the people, or to it's like, what's the thing? People talk about brainwashing, but people have dirty minds. It's like, if only that was what was being talked about, right?
Right.
That we're cleaning ourselves from our conservative and liberal programming, and being direct about things. And see, that's what I mean. It's about being direct. And it's just stupid, the idea that political, that whether religious or whatever, that you call people conservative or liberal just because of like what side they're on. That doesn't make any, that the words end up meaning nothing if you do that.
Right. It doesn't make sense.
And so before the last, so part number 8, I remember this. There was a Pakistani leader, and this Pakistani leader would have got elected, but the West did not want this woman to be elected, and so rather than, and people are trained in multiple ways. Some countries require their politicians to be of certain moral fortitude, certain mental and physical fortitude. I mean, in general, they're not going to actually literally go to fight, but you kind of want somebody that if it came to that, they could actually, fight back if the palace was stormed, or they could actually go out there and at least command the armies physically to march out there. You don't want these people falling asleep in their political office. And so number 7, while some people are thought of differently outside of their time, that's what I think comes out most of all. And before that, we have this stuff about I don't know, I guess planetary intelligences. I think one of the things is that there's entities that are of a different particular categories.
I read something about that.
some entities
Like
aren't as easy to narrow
just
down as far as the
three.
like if you say
That
this
was just
what?
how I don't know what that is. Sorry about that. I don't know what that was.
We're trying to say
But
something.
yeah, just last night or early this morning, yeah, I was thinking along those lines and studying something. I wrote something that I can share at the end, but it may not be related to this, but it might.
But if there's if things are more deliberate, like see, you don't need to say that this is of certain astrological correspondence or elemental correspondence or whatever to have things work just fine without it, but you can apply that to stuff. And then you can say, oh, this person is this sort of character and that sort of character. And so, but there are entities that attach themselves to those operations at the very least. Maybe they're not the ones that are called upon specifically, but then again, maybe it's like the Goetia or some of the other ones that tell you it's like, people want to feel they're special and think that oh, Baal comes when he's called and Ashtaroth, and it's like I know all of them, and it's like it says right there, if it works in such a fashion, you might only be hearing from one of tens of thousands of individuals, which is fine, but just automatically assuming that the greatest entity of any category related to your operation is the thing answering it doesn't entirely work like that. I mean, some people pray to Jesus and get Pan or something. And so before that, the section again, you have some things, but it's the one sounds like a technology company. So like there's a conflict between military and technology, I guess. And the way that things are, the names and all that stuff of the places and the things and stuff, that's bound to change too. And before that, we have the it really doesn't matter what your parents did, I don't think. It's like what you are. So people cast people out because, oh, your parents, and it's like, really? Now I understand if like the one leader basically the people call him the leader of Europe, and it's pretty close. And this leader of Europe, we're not going to go into too much detail here. I don't want to whatever, but the this leader of Europe, okay, his father worked for Hitler and had the highest honors, and Hitler didn't care that they were Jews. That was whatever. But the thing is, it's like, yeah, but what did the son do? Oh, the son's even worse. A son even has a worse plan than Hitler had. Okay, then we can judge him by that, right? Or we can look at Bill Gates's parents or something like. But anyways, there's other examples. But and then another 3-group line here. The third in sequence, and well, there's this artificial idea of the feminine they're putting forward, and they're all acting like it's, oh, we're working together. It's not like we're it's like, no, things are more dictatorial than ever, I think. And the other one is like, okay, the
rights that are
I take issues. It's like you hunt to dedicate it to eat or whatever. Don't just
right.
There's more to it, but I'm just making sure I say something for each of the 11 main groups here. And I think of the so we're talking about the blue goddess, right? So the yoga, so the tantra is the red one, and the blue is the yoga one, which is basically like a flow thing. Because the pig is often seen as a symbol of a so-called goddess, and that's but It's the one, it's the, you draw down. So you
Mm-hmm.
go, the tantra would be going up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is pointing all, but yeah, people are, I don't know. There's bound to be something that happens with some female leader that's like, everybody's actually watching what's going on.
Yeah.
And we're talking about something about ancestry. So it's a specific thing, but blue, right? So one of the things going on, I'd say the blue stripers, if you know what I'm talking about, they don't follow it's not about following that religion as far as something from scripture and from oral tradition that was written down, whatever. It's something else, and so we see some connections with this. But say what you were going to say.
Oh, my little writing. If I can find it and read it. It's talking about the revenge, getting even power, how that could be not a very good, balance of things right there. Revenge, be not a monster. The desire to see one hurt who hurt you must not give thy precious power unto these types. It only grows them in their hour. I know it's a silly rhyme, but um, yeah, and where I got this actually was what I learned, like from reading about curses, like, to focus a certain raw emotion towards a person, say you don't like. Well, that could grow them. They could like increase in power, and that's not really what the desired effect would, I would want
Yeah,
for
so
someone.
this we were ended up with 70 lines here,
Mhm.
and they talk about 47, and perhaps 47 is what it intended by the thing, because some of this is like not,
Mhm.
it's like part of the sentence is on one line, part of the sentence is on another line. So maybe this was intended to be arranged into 47.
I have no idea where the curse thing came from, but
Well, in a way, everything's a blessing or whatever. It's like, but it's usually best. It's like, first of all, because curses come through you, but it's usually best to temper a curse in ways of like, okay, well, if they make certain decisions, then it's not going to take away. First of all, you don't want a curse to take away from you, too,
right.
and you
Hmm.
don't want to prevent them from making a beneficial situation. So, like, if they stay on whatever, um, but like,
Right.
it's like you go out into the army and it's like, okay, whatever. It's like, and cursing people when they die, it's like, okay, this actually makes a lot more sense, because then there's no hope for them to be any different. People talk like, oh, you just go back until you get it right. And it's like, if anything, that explains how bad things are, right? Is it
Right.
go back and forth until you get things right. And
Mm.
no. And so, oh well, that's interesting too. Maybe it's not just like the yoga thing.
Mhm.
The color that comes forth in those initial 7 lines, um, you can think of it in perhaps of, people are paying attention. It's about attention, but there's no warmth. There's no emotion. There's no action to it. It's just whatever, and it's just,
Mm. Well,
it's maybe something not healthy, maybe something just, filling things up, not wasting time, whatever. And because of that, but then again, if it's treated differently, right?
right.
Because one
The power of
the next
emotion.
7 lines, um, you might say that a ritual structure, it's
Mhm.
important to use ritual structure. Some people like, it's like I had other places to go, but you may see in some of my earlier videos, I had a couple altars in my living room space.
Mm-hmm.
And I would stay there, and there'd be a place in my bedroom where I'd stand up and do little rituals and stuff like this, and I'd ritualize my table and stuff like that. But it's important sometimes to have a place that's only that. When it's living in one's own home, it's an issue in some ways, or in one's property. But then again, like that's why, for example, I set up the temple, is because it's like, okay, that would be it'd be easier to operate like actual gatherings through it. If it's just me using it, it's worthwhile too. But you know,
I like one space to itself inside, and then one special space outside. Well, for this here. So yeah.
and I find it works better. Incubation and stuff works better. But if you're whatever, but the thing about all those stuff, it's like you still accomplish what you need to accomplish before you do that. You do some extra thing. It's not just, because people are like, oh well, if you fast and sleep in a corner in a bare room without a bed or something like this, it's like it's not just some empty austerity. It's sort of different. And the weird thing is that as a rule, I don't need
Mm-hmm.
as much sleep. And the effect is even greater if it's a place that's a communal place of worship.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you need to get to do that sort of thing. You need to get somebody to say trust you or something like that, because obviously some dude sleeping in the back in the back in between services for a week or two or something like that is
Right.
whatever. But it's I find it has more effect.
Mm-hmm.
And
That was
one of the things too is like we have this system, and the system sort of the system eventually has to change, and so all the figures, the people I think they're super. It's like they can hide in their bunkers and all that other stuff, and it's like, but there's a force behind that, I think. But that force, you could say, actually started in what we call Europe. And it sort of did its thing over the world. And there's multiple ways to think of that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and the part that and that fourth section, so that was talking about those 3 lines. So the 6 lines to follow that, one of the things we run into is this idea that it's like people are so upset about the idea. It's like evolution. It's like evolution's okay with everything except humans. Why? That doesn't deny the idea that maybe we have a different soul that can accomplish things that other souls can't, until you're in a human form or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
that people talk about, it actually does if one of the shamanistic things, you get in this mode of these animals and stuff like this. And berserking is one of the ways they call it. It's like it actually does something. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's like some sort of thing, oh, you dog or ape or pig or something like that, there's or you stupid donkey. All around the world, you see people yelling in the street. You translate it, you stupid donkey, something about somebody's mother or something.
Right.
It's
Right.
the same language, but people refer to like subhuman or whatever. It's like, but it's not. It's part of being human, and if you operate it rightly, then you don't have to worry about that sort of thing. And then in a different way, like that part man, that totally man, totally God thing that appears so much all over the place, not just Christianity. And so the next one I think is the longest one in terms of line 3, 3, 4. So it's 10 lines. And if things aren't consistent, people start leaving things out or corrupting things here and there, whole systems fall. And all these things, these past monuments, we don't know how long any of them are going to last. And there's some of them that whatever, and we like to think like but you can think of things in the broader sense of all this time and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that 4-line thing is focused. It implies some other stuff, but it's focused on what could be said to be the feminine. But genders are given differently for different planets. It's like if you say Lucifer is Venus, then, well, people tend to think of that as male. And the Lucifer figures in history are basically all male. But I think of Luciferianism not as like, oh, you're going to be like the new Jesus or something like that. I think of it as something like one lives the Lucifer principle in terms of both the word and, the different examples in history that are given their own linguistic terms, Nuga and all that other stuff.
I was just studying last night about the, making the, well, how do I say this? I don't know. Making, the female stronger, like not as in strong as in, oh, weak, or, not nothing like
people's
that.
own abilities, but it's like, yeah, it's
like the whole thing,
it's like if all but two of the top 600 companies are led by men, then what? It's like, well, okay, what's the problem? I think they've changed it so there's a couple more or something like that, but it's like you value the differences of each person in society.
Yeah.
And what's this next line here? You got another 7 lines, and one of the things is one's role, particularly if society is not stepping up. That doesn't mean you can't step up. So whenever one put, and it doesn't matter whether you're remembered or forgotten, you've done what you do. The Egyptians talk about the run, or the name, as one of your 6. Well, there's different list of parts, but this next one you got 5, and yeah, I don't know what this is, but people understand. There's a lot of this, like that artificial, like you have these pop stars, Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift and all that other stuff, and they're like, oh, they're the queen of their Swifties, and it's like, really, you're going to rule your life because you're some musician likes or doesn't like whatever, and they've been paid $400 million to take whatever side they're taking. So it's not like you can necessarily trust their opinions, especially since you look at some of them, it's like, oh, they had emotion, they had thought, and then they found their way into the just standard mold that they didn't really stand out anymore, other than that they were big and famous and all that other stuff, and no advancement in their musical skills or feeling or whatever, and even it got less. And
it's just like music is not good nowadays.
And part of the thing is people don't know the difference between need and want, right? People have actual need, and people are like all wanting, and people, it just stands in the way of stuff. Just like we see all these false accusations going around, and there's people who actually have things that need to be addressed in society that they witnessed or happened to them or whatever, and that doesn't get done with because people's like, oh, I need my attention and I need all this stuff, right?
Far too materialistic for one, and oh my, needs, need this. I don't know what people are doing nowadays, but
and so here's the 5. The next 10 lines, I think we're referring to something biblical. So something biblical in the church and all that stuff. So some places in the Bible, there's actually places cursed in the Bible that people make pilgrimage to, as one has heard. And it's like you hear one of two things. It's like you don't know if this is a real account or not sometimes, and it's like, but you figure somebody does it or somebody attaches to it. But some things are forgotten, right? And sometimes it's forgotten. Like I talk about the 13th bloodline that's open, and it's not necessarily that you become rich and famous because you've done the sick things that the so-called Illuminati people want you to do. And now there's like an organization that sells books. It's like, you remember the Grand Illuminati, and it's like the Illuminati didn't use the eye and the triangle. So anybody, it's not the same thing. It's just somebody that wanted to scam people in the books, which works a little bit better than the back alley or the Hollywood party people, but or maybe it fulfills different needs for different people, I guess. But one of the things that's coming through with what's said there, I think that the reference to things has power. There's an idea that maybe it's the place itself, but some of the stuff, it's just how you use the reference to the place or the place. Now, I do believe that you do rituals in a particular spot, and I like the idea of a nexion. That a nexion is a convergence point, but it's not just for that place. You kind of have things going outwards. I invoke all the time. Well, not, but you know what I mean. Like very frequently, my temple room in particular, I invoke for beyond the temple. And not just something that my books sell or I'm going to get a lot of attention. It's like I would rather have less attention and have at the same amount of actual influence, not just people watch my videos, whatever, that's whatever.
Right on.
So there's things some intermingling. So some things aren't direct, but other things are. You know what I mean? Like one of the things that a person probably should get used to the way things are going is, there's going to be people everybody has to go to church in this one guy's barn, this whatever. And people might actually try to start forcing that sort of stuff. So the thing is that you intermingle and you have your effect regardless. I've practiced that with some groups, and like some groups, they're like, you don't have to lie. I've never had to lie about that sort of stuff. That people just say vague things and then just figure, oh, you're going along with it, so you must believe everything we're telling. It's like, why would you assume that the people just believe everything that's being said? Because I've talked to people, aside, that are part of some of these groups, and it's like they don't, but they figure it's like a comparative religion or whatever, or it's just there's something about that church or whatever that they
Very good point. Very good point.
And
I hadn't even thought of that.
I don't believe this stuff about love and power being opposite poles or some thing like that, but we have so 6 lines and then another 5 lines to close it. But things multiply beyond the plan, right? You put something forward and you train people to maybe spread things or something like that, and then it kind of they influence people, and it kind of spreads like that. And one of the things that I think that those last 5 lines mentions is that if we are in line, the reason why we're so mistaken is because we're trying to pretend that nature is not, we're in nature. We have to live by the rules of nature per se, regardless of our spiritual side or whatever. We got to use that stuff. And when we stop pretending like, it's God against man and man against nature, and some of the things that's creeped into Christian theology or was there to start with, that sort of stuff.
It'll take a lot to get a balance, just a balance back in all ways, in people's minds, in physical ways, in emotional ways, and mental ways. Wow.
And maybe it's not Europe and and the majority of Asia. Maybe it's people on the southern side of some of those continents, or maybe the other continents that are their influence is going to spread. Now, penguins gets you thinking further south, right? Well, the tip of South Africa would get you into penguins, but and what would the banner be? You hear a lot of myths talk about the black banner, and you got to confuse. You got to talk about the real black banner, not some not some organization that's been set up so that there's this boogeyman enemy that they can fight whole countries over. And feel free to take up the last couple minutes, and then I'm going to go here. Kaflon comes in Shad, world leaders. I feel like I can read that line because it's the title.
More powers. Okay, got that. Yeah, jumping off point. Spring is sprung. I think I've said that before. The biggest changes are seen. Oh no.
You okay?